From educators to authors, join us now on our new journey as podcasters. In our podcast, Author Talk with L&B, we will talk about our author journey and share our stories in order to help you share yours. You will get an in-depth look of the how-tos we were looking for when we got started. Stay tuned for topics ranging from how to get published to how to stay inspired.
Hello and welcome to Author Talk with L&B.
Where we'll get you to where you want to be.
Yes, welcome. We are authors. Our whole goal for this podcast is to help aspiring authors that want to publish a book, that have a story, and they just don't know how to go about it. Last week, we had a special guest, Lisa, who is a traditionally published author. She came and she talked to us about the process that she went through, the pros and cons of traditionally publishing. I thought it was very helpful. She did such a great job and I learned so much. But today we're going to be talking about the self-publishing process. This would be a very helpful episode because many times we have this story that we want to tell. We have this idea, but then we don't even know how to get there. We don't know what to do. What are the steps? What are the best ways to go about it? And so we, over the years that we've published, we both have 2 books, learned a lot along the way, right? We've made some mistakes and we've learned from them. And we want to put together information that's going to help you in your process and maybe skip some of those roadblocks that you might have that maybe we went through, but you don't have to go through. So
that will be your how-to.
Your how-to, exactly. So the first how-to, we broke it up into 4 different categories. We're going to talk about the writing process, the illustration and design, the publishing process, and then how the biggest one, the hardest one, how to actually promote your book and get it out there. So I'm going to start off with the writing part, okay? Because that's a really big part, and that sometimes it can take months. I remember my first book, it took quite a while for me to get that part solid. And for me, it started off as a dream. I was an educator and I had a dream about a little girl struggling with fear. And I wanted to tell a story about how to overcome fear and how to persevere. So it dealt a lot with social emotional learning. And so what I would do is I would carve out at least an hour of my day every day. And I would take that time to sit in a quiet space. A lot of times it was in the morning before my whole family got up, before the kids got up, before my husband got up. And I would sit down and I would just write whatever came to mind. For me, it came out poetically and it came out in rhyme. And so I was playing with it a little bit, just trying to get my story on paper. So that's how it started for me. Now, Laura, how did it all start for you?
Well, for me, it was actually a gratitude poem I wrote for my children. I had a difficult journey to motherhood, and it honestly was just like an outpouring of love. I wanted it to do it for a personal thing, and then I made it into a published thing. So I was really excited about it because it's very near and dear to my heart. But the first book is more about love between a parent and child, and it was also in rhyme form.
Yeah. So however your story comes out is how it comes out. And what I want to tell you as potential authors, aspiring authors, it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be the roughest piece of work you've ever done. But as long as you get your story typed up on paper, however you do it, whether you write notes, you're old school, you write notes or you type it up, you just need something to begin with, something to start with. And so I don't want you to think, oh my gosh, what if I'm not editing it correctly? What if I'm not doing this or that? No, get it down on paper. Even if it takes a couple months to really get your story. If you're an educator, you got to have your characters correct, your setting, your plot, and your problem, solution, all of those different pieces. So get your story on paper.
But also, it doesn't have to follow, if you notice, some children's books, it doesn't have to follow the traditional plot map. So mine's a poem. It does not follow that. But if you have something that you've written and it doesn't follow everything, it's okay.
It really is. It can be a unique and original. And that's the beauty of self-publishing. It doesn't always have to fall into the parameters of these rules. Whereas a traditionally published book does. It has to have the correct word count. It has to have the structure. All of the pieces have to align in order for it to be traditionally published.
Mhm.
Whereas self-publishing, you have a little bit more wiggle room and you can do
Totally.
more.
Mhm.
Now, I want to say that, preface it by saying that it is important to do your research and to see what is out there. So part of writing, I would take like maybe an hour out of my day every day. But then I would also go to the library like once a week and I would read every poetic children's book that dealt with social emotional learning or something related to solving some type of problem. I would read every single book that I could get my hands on. I would get them out of the library and I would study because I wanted to see what was out there. What are kids reading? What is the style of how they're
Mhm.
reading? And so I think it's very important to also keep in mind that you are going to be selling this book, so you need to have the I know you need to write your book, but then you also have to have a salesman mindset kind of too, in the sense that what am I appealing to my audience? Is this the kind of stories they're reading? Is this topic too flooded, meaning there's too many books on the topic, so maybe I need to rethink what I'm writing about. So all of that type of research of figuring out, well, I want to write about like loving myself, but there could be like a million other books, and you have to think like, okay, where's the need at? Where's the need? And so I would go and I would study at the library and I would read and read and read. And that's kind of how I use that to kind of model my story and to fit it into a place where I felt like kids would actually read it and really enjoy it. So, do you want to add
That's
anything to that,
sure.
Laura?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a great start. Research is such a big word, but I think really it's like making sure you know exactly what you want for your book,
Yeah.
from your book. I figured out what is my personal author mission. I wrote an author mission and I actually have it. I need to pull it up for you. But I wrote an author mission and I wanted to make sure everything that I did when I went back to edit it, when I finished my newest book, I always went back to my mission and sort of guided what I wanted from the book and how I really went about researching for the book. But I'm going to pull it out right now, and I would encourage everybody to do the same. Just what is it that you want from being an author?
What are
And
you
then
seeking
who's
to
your,
do?
yeah, and who's your
Yeah.
audience? Who are you
Yeah.
writing to? What do you want from it? So my author mission is I would like to write in order to make a positive and lasting impact on others. So I knew that whatever I wrote had to have words, images that either it brought joy to others that were reading
Mm,
it, or like, that had like social emotional component to it, something that would impact others in a positive way.
love that. I think that's so important. And just also like Laura said, just knowing who your audience is. Are you writing for even through two? Are you writing for grades 3 through 5? What
Mhm.
kind of vocabulary are you using? Is it appropriate for the age group? So lots of research behind it, but it's not like it sounds like a lot, but you can put things in place to kind of help you. For example, one of the things that I did was I had a lot of beta readers. Beta readers are just people that maybe for me were in the education field, children, people that I wanted them to read it and say, you know what, is this something that is appealing to you? Do you feel like it's good? So I had a couple educators that were English majors and taught English and taught reading. I had several of them read my book. I had children read my book. I had my kids who are 8 and 12, they read my book and read my manuscript. And so I would have these people that would come in and just kind of read and help me, like maybe add this, or why don't you, former colleagues that are also educators would give me input. And so that kind of helped me to also formulate my story. So then I have this story that has been looked at by my beta readers, that I've kind of done research on, that I've kind of put together. And it's still very rough, right? So the next step would be to get a professional editor, which I highly recommend. I have a professional editor that does a fantastic job And there's types of editing, like there's the editing that looks for like the punctuation and the structure, and then there's like developmental editing where it's like developing the story and things like that. You want to make sure you have the full package. Good editors. Where
It's
you might
crucial.
ask, yeah, it's so crucial.
Mhm.
You might ask, like, where do I find an editor? And I don't know, Laura. We're talking about these things. I'm like, we might have to break this into 2 episodes because there's like a lot to cover.
Yeah.
But yeah. But the way I found my editor was I went on Facebook and I joined author group. And the author platform is such a great space. And there are many groups, there are hundreds of groups that you can join where you can just ask other authors questions. Hey, has anybody worked with the editor? Can you give me some recommendations on really great editors? And that's how I found my editor. Her name is Brooke Vitale, and she has written several books. She's very well versed in the children's book community. That was just a recommendation that was given to me. And I went for it, and she helped me to edit developmentally. She helped me with the punctuation. She helped me with the
Mhm.
form in my poem. She was like, there are different types of poetry. There's like this iambic pentameter, and there's this type of what structure are you trying to do? Are you doing ABA? So she kind of helped me with the rhythm. She helped me with the beat and all of the different components of it. And so what we did was I hired her. It was like a contract deal. It was the most important investment to me because I
Mhm.
wanted my work to be pristine, you know? And so she would give me feedback. I would change some things. I would send it back to her. She would give me some more feedback. I would change some more things. So, and it was just this constant back and forth for
Mhm.
maybe like a month or two where we would just kind of go back and forth, maybe a little less than that. But it was so helpful. So I would advise you to do your homework and find a really great editor. Laura, do you have anything to say on that?
Yeah, I mean, just making sure that whoever it is that you vet that person, obviously,
Yes,
you can go to these all these different platforms to make sure that you're making the right choice.
that's so true. And like, I know some of you've heard of Fiverr where you can contract out. Not all editors are the same. So really researching and making sure you're doing your background and
Mhm.
seeing how many books has this person edited and all of that. Laura is an editor herself, so perhaps your experience was a little different than mine. I'm not an editor. Laura has the knack. I have a cousin who's written several books. She's written over 20 books. She's an editor. She edits her stuff. Not my cup of tea. So it just depends. But if you go through a self-publishing company, it's kind of like a hybrid where you pay them and they'll kind of do all the little bits and parts of it. Then they have their editors
Mhm.
too. So this
Mhm.
is me doing it all on my own. Now, my first one, I went through a publishing company. I will never do that again. I'll always do it on my own. And then the final thing is just the formatting of the book, making sure that you have the formatting of how you want the book to, but that'll come more with the illustrations, how you kind of format the book. So we're going to move
Right.
on to the illustration and design process.
Yeah. Okay, so the second phase or process is the illustration and design phase. So if you're just joining us and you already have something written, it's already edited and you feel good
Mhm.
about it, this is where you're joining us. What next? What do I do? I have so many things that I've written. I want to put them out into the universe. This is what you can do. You could find someone to illustrate it. So if it's a children's book, you can, or if it's not a children's book and you just need help with the cover, you could find someone on platforms like Upwork and Fiverr. I found my illustrator who is amazing. I love her and we really work well together. But it took some work. I vetted and I interviewed at least 4 to 5 people before choosing. I'm so glad that I did that because it allowed me to see all of their illustrations. So you want to know what the next step is. You would basically post a job saying like, here's what I'm looking for. You could be very specific in what you're looking for. You could, even if it's time sensitive. So mine was a little bit time sensitive because I wanted to publish it. My daughter's birthday, like coming up on time. So I put that in my job post, like a quick turnaround. Someone that really wanted to collaborate with me. So I don't know. I think some illustrators are more laissez-faire. It just depends on who you're working with. I know I wanted to collaborate a lot with my illustrator. So the next phase for that, after you found your illustrator, you have to format or edit your book. So a lot of times, depending on what type of book, you need to know what dimensions it is. Let's just say you're using Amazon, for instance, to self publish your book. If you're using KDP, it will have specific guidelines in terms of like what the margins are and like what format it is. So it needs to be eventually turned into PDF, whether it's just written text or whether it has illustrations. Whatever you do, make sure your illustrator, whoever you're working with, knows the criteria so that you have it ready to upload. As you're doing all of this, you need to make sure you're prepping for components of it. So, like your book description, bio, dedication, your copyrights page all encompasses this like design process because it's incorporated within your book. It's
Mhm.
part of the design within your book. So be very intentional about every bit of that. Am I missing anything, Brittany?
No, I will just say with my first book, I did it through a self-publishing company. And they actually did all the formatting for me. They would tell me, okay, send us your book description. We'll edit it and put it in there. Send us your bio, send us your dedication. And they kind of formatted all of the words. I sent them to my manuscript and they placed everything where it would go. They worked with my illustrator to kind of place everything. And so it was kind of more like it was a little easier in that way. But then with my second book, I did not go through a publishing company, so I specifically wanted to find an illustrator that also did formatting because I just felt like it would just like eliminate a lot of the extra legwork of trying to find somebody else who could format. I wanted it all encompassed. So I found an illustrator. Again, I went on Facebook group and had found some recommendations and kind of did the same thing Laura did, vetted the illustrators. I at least went through 10 and I found the one that I wanted. I did a different illustrator with my second book than I did with my first. And I really connect with my illustrator that did my second book, but she also did the formatting. She did the book. She put in the description for me. I wrote it. She put it in my bio, dedication, all of that. And so you're doing it on your own, and you can find an illustrator that will also format your book. That would be awesome. That would take a lot of the work away. So try to do that. That will also format the cover and the design and how it's going to look. That'll be a really good thing. You might have asked, like, what is KDP? So we'll talk about that at the end. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
done with all the bits and pieces, you upload it into a system just really quickly. And I think the last two processes, maybe we'll do it on the next one so
Okay.
that we can really elaborate on it. But what I will say as we wrap this up, so today we talked about the writing process and we talked about the illustrations and the design process. You might say to yourself, okay, well, why would you do everything on your own and not just hire a self-publishing company to kind of do those for you so to relieve some of the stress? And I will say there's a huge difference in price. If you publish on your own, you're probably saving maybe even over half of what it would cost to hire a self-publishing company to do it. And so not only are we telling you things that we learned, but we're also trying to explain to authors ways to save money. Now, maybe you say that, you know what, I have a big budget and I don't want to be bothered with all the bits and pieces of it, then maybe going through a self-publishing company is the right move for you. Or if you're saying, you know what, I feel like I do need to save money and I would like to know the process and how to do it, then maybe this is the route for you. So just trying to decide what is the best process. Thank you so much for joining us. And I think next time we'll be
Yay.
talking about the publishing process. Like, so, okay, so you've gotten all these things done. Now you're moving into the publishing process. We'll talk more about what that looks like. And then the biggest thing, which is going to, I feel like it'll take up most of our time next time, marketing,
Mm-hmm.
marketing, marketing, marketing. You can have a book and nobody knows about it. And it could be the best book ever. How do
Mhm.
you get your book out there? How are you do you become a successful author? What do you do? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But we just want to thank you so
Thank
much
you. Thank you,
for
thank you, thank
joining
you.
us, and we hope that this was very helpful to you on
Yay.
your journey. And so, yeah, we're so excited to talk to you about the publishing process and the marketing process. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on Author Talk with LMB. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights to guide you on your journey as an inspiring author. Remember, every great story starts with a single word. So keep writing, keep dreaming, and never stop believing in your voice. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow authors. Join us next time for more tips, interviews, and encouragement. Until then, keep turning your pages and crafting your narrative. Happy writing.